I'm Nate, this is Troy, and today we have a special guest, a tournament-winning offshore captain, John Azato from No Limits. Welcome to the show, John.
Welcome, John.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Let's dive right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where your boat's located, and what you do.
I run a full-time charter boat at Indian River, Delaware.
Awesome. And it's a boat I'm familiar with, but fill in the crowd on what kind of boat it is and how they can get a hold of you, what your charter name is, and what your specialties are. I know you're a man of many skills and target a bunch of different stuff throughout the year, but you're one of the best offshore captains, and it's a pleasure to have you on here today.
Yeah. So it's a 45 Young Brothers. It was built up in Maine. She was brought down to North Carolina, and she fished out of North Carolina for most of her life before I had it. So she's got a pretty basic Carolina charter boat layout, which is great for what I do. It's kind of like the best of both worlds, really, for the inshore and the offshore stuff. It's not too big of a boat for the wreck fishing stuff that I do in the wintertime and in the fall. It's not too small to get out to the canyons and fast enough that I can get there in reasonable time. And she's fishy. She's very fishy.
Yeah, definitely one of the fishiest boats out there. You guys are slaying it. Every time I see a video or an update from you, I swear the fish are bigger than the last.
Something about a single screw. They just love the single screws.
Yeah, it's certainly an efficient boat to get out there, but it is a pain in the ass to park it.
I don't know. You get used to it. It's really not that bad once you get used to it. Most people are scared of it, but I don't know. Just kind of learned on a single screw, and makes it that much easier when you go to a bigger boat that has two motors, you know? So
yeah, for sure. So I know half of the year in the winters you fish out of the Outer Banks commercially for bluefin tuna, and then in the summers you head up north and you start hitting the canyons in the Northeast. Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, I love fishing from home. You know, the Northeast Canyons is always home, but I also love fishing out of the Outer Banks in the wintertime. It's not only is it a shorter ride, but the amount of fish that are down there, it's incredible. The bluefin fishery that we have in the wintertime it's absolutely incredible. I really wish that more people could see how good of a fishery it was, and it might help to get us more quota down there in the summer or in the wintertime, but I don't know. Who knows what will ever happen. At the same time, again, I also love fishing at home. It's home. It's what I know. It's what I grew up with. It's, fishing here is it's like, knowing the back of your hand, So it makes things easier when you're trying to run a business. A lot of my following is from up this way. So to get people to come down to North Carolina in the wintertime when it's cold and rough and all that stuff, it can be a challenge getting groups down there sometimes. But the fishing is definitely something to see one time if you ever get a chance.
Yeah, and starting it off with the commercial bluefin, I know tons of people watch that show, Wicked Tuna. What kind of truth is there to that show? I spent the summer fishing up out of Massachusetts. I already know the answer, but a lot of people don't. They think you guys are getting $100,000 for a fish. What kind of prices are you seeing? What kind of stuff can you immediately call out as bullshit?
I mean, there's some things that are true. A lot of it's true on that show. I mean, obviously the way they fish, a lot of the guys that are doing it, they're commercial fishermen. A lot of them don't need the money. They're either their families have money or they have other businesses or this. So there's a few select guys that do, and they are true hardcore commercial guys. But as far as like truth goes in the show, the whole money end of things, it's all pulled out of the thin air. We come into the dock, you unload your fish, you get a core sample, you take a tail cut, you weigh your fish, and they pack it up. You don't even have to stay for this part. They'll pack it up, put it in ice, and they hand you a sheet of paper and go, see ya. You might not know what you got for that fish for a week or two, and then to actually get paid on it. So this year, the last couple of years, we've had pretty decent pricing from what I've seen over my span of doing it down there. $7 to $10, pretty decent, fair pricing.
Yeah,
I know like a lot of the guys in the summertime complain about low prices.
I know you guys caught a whopper of a fish this year. Tell me a little bit about it. I know Dante was with you, and it looked insane with you guys trying to pull that thing up on the deck.
That was a big one. It's one of the bigger ones I've ever caught. It was 703 with the tail, so about 680-ish core weight. Fish ate a short rigger bite. It was a short rigger bite. I think we fought it for 2 hours or so. Not too bad. Pretty decent decent fight, decent fish. Came up, harpooned it, pulled it in the boat. Didn't think it was anywhere near as big as it was when we saw it the first time. Matter of fact, me and Dante were kind of going at it over him holding the line, and then we bicker a little bit when we fish together. As a lot
That's
of
to
people
say the
know, but
least. What kind of bait did
yeah.
the fish take?
It was a 2-ounce magic tail head with just a rig value. Rig value. That's nothing special.
Shout out to Magic Tail and those two magics. By the way, shameless plug, if you use the code Deepwater Legends, all capital letters, you get 15% off your $50 order or more. Gear up for summer. So, we fished a couple times out of New Jersey when you were filling in for Waterproof. We did a lot of yellowfin tuna fishing. We also did some overnight fishing, some sword fishing, and the bite was outstanding those days. With you doing both kinds of fishing, which one do you prefer, chunking or trolling? And what makes you choose one way or the other?
I kind of prefer trolling, honestly. I like being on the hunt, like that feeling of driving around looking for fish, working a mark. It's more of like for me because I'm not downstairs cranking on anything and I really don't care to crank on any fish anymore. So for me, like it's the fun of just getting them to bite. Whereas with like the chunking end of things, you could set it on the drift, you could anchor up, and you're bringing the fish to you. Whereas, it's just not as fun for me. A lot of my customers enjoy the chunking because it's more interactive for them. But for me, it could go either way, really.
Silent Troy over here isn't going to ask any questions, so I guess I'll keep going. So, when you're out there trolling, what kind of stuff are you looking for before you set lines? Now, like every fisherman, of course, we're looking at SST charts. We're using the knowledge from other fishermen in our network. We're really patterning the fish over time. Are there any signs where if you're heading out to a specific location, you see something specific, you're like, hey, I'm dropping lines here no matter what?
It depends. I mean, a hard temp break, if you come across like a temperature break, that's one thing. A big pack of feeding mammals, something like that. Like, I've been on my way out before and you see like a dozen whales or something, two tones, birds, something like that. I'd be okay, let me turn over here real quick and try this out for half an hour or something and see what we can find, see if I even mark anything or do anything like that. But for the most part, I mean, we're really looking for temperature breaks. The SST charts help us plan, prior to leaving the dock. I'll use the day before's, reports and talking with networking guys and stuff like that. And, there's a lot of different things that go into finding them. But, as far as like specifically like when I decide to stop, it's usually a temperature break thing or a tide line or something like that, depending on the time of year. Sometimes it's also structure related. So when you get that temperature break over a certain spot, in the canyon or on the edge or even in the flats, that's where if that's what I'm looking for, that's where I'll stop.
Do you think time has anything to do with that, like early morning or late evening?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I've always been a fan of getting there early. I'm a lot of times I'm one of the first boats on scene and I feel like it really kind of helps me a little bit. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You can also use other guys. Like I work with a lot of guys at Ocean City, some guys out of Cape May and whatnot. We all kind of network together and we try and start where like one guy starts here, another guy starts here, another guy starts here, and we all kind of meet wherever we find something, but it just kind of depends,
A
so
funny story.
every
We're
day is
usually the
different.
kind of people that are out there so early as well, and it seems like every trip we take is like an hour earlier than the last. And when I first moved to
Yeah.
Florida, I told Troy like, "Hey, we're gonna go fish out of Palm Beach," and he's like, "Okay, what time do you want to go?" And we were living in Winter Haven. We were about an hour and a half from Palm Beach. I'm like, "Well, we're gonna leave the house at midnight to get there. That way, by the time everything's set up and everything, we're good to go." After an hour and 15 minutes, we were at Palm Beach, got in the boat, drove out our 3 miles to 1,000 feet of water, and we were just sitting in the dark for 6. So
I've
yeah,
done
I
that
mean,
too.
it's still better than being there
You get
late.
excited, you just want to be
Yeah,
there, and then your charter's looking at you like, why are we here so early? They bite early.
and when I have a fishing trip come up, like I don't fish as often as you, but we're usually weekend warriors here. Like I mean, it's the whole week. I'm on the apps, looking at weather, looking at the conditions. listening for reports, trying to find out if the reports are good or bad, searching the pictures if it's like pictures that were posted before, stuff like that, so we can really pattern it down and make sure it's good to go. And usually we have tremendous luck out there. We're very fortunate to have a much shorter run here as well, about 60 miles to get to the fishing area versus the 105 out of New Jersey often.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I know people have been telling me relentlessly, they're like, ask this guy about big eye fishing. Everybody wants to catch big eyes. Big eyes are the elusive monster of the deep, and you are the master of them. What kind of secrets can you give to guys for them? What kind of tips are you willing to share to help these guys that are looking to like really go target these things and try to have some better luck out there?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a master by any means, but I do my best to make it happen. But I mean, as far as like the big eyes go, it depends on the time of the year too. Everything changes as the year goes on. Like early season, you're really working the temperature breaks. You're working the temperature breaks over structure. Knowing where these fish sit in the structure kind of helps. So like you're kind of picking places that you think they're going to be, or they've been in the past, or where they typically hold. Um, Obviously signs of life, pilot whales are a huge thing to look for when you're big eye fishing. The pilot whales are feeding on the squid. The tunas are feeding on the squid. A lot of times you get big eye bites in the whales. If there's no whales, it's a structure thing. Obviously, if you mark them, I don't really leave that area. We'll kind of stick and stay and do what we got to do and not really venture off. I mean, it pays off sometimes it doesn't. There's a lot of different things that go into it. It just kind of depends on what's going on when. Like I said, the water is the biggest thing. Once everything kind of heats up in the later part of the summertime, it's all about the structure.
Now, do you have a
If there's something
specific
being caught.
speed that you like to troll to target big eyes that differs from yellowfin
I
tuna?
don't really change my speed at all. All my speed, like for tuna fishing in general, is all the same. My yellowfin speed, my bluefin speed, my big eye speed, they're all the same. 6.5 to 7 knots is really kind of where I run it. It's more of actually for me, it's an RPM thing. So I run on my boat with the Caterpillar, it's 850, or no, I'm sorry, 750. I idle at 750, and that's where I set my idle for troll. So at 750, I'm 6.5, 7 knots.
And are you changing up your spread at all? Are you pulling it in closer, putting it out further, putting different stuff out? Have you found certain colors work
If
better
I'm
than others?
strictly, yeah, I mean, if I'm strictly big eye fishing, I'm definitely going to pull a different spread. I'm going to pull a lot more ballyhoos, less plastics, bigger ballyhoos, heavier stuff. I'm not going to fish. Typically, I won't fish a 1 ounce head or, a sea witch or something like that.
Just because a bigger fish with a bigger profile pushes it out of the way and gets a lot of missed strikes.
Yeah, exactly. The big eyes tend to push things out of the water. So like when they come up, they'll actually, as they're coming up, that what do you call it? Wave of water tends to push a bait out of the way, and sometimes they miss it. So sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. I'd
We had a
rather them
heartbreaker.
eat it the first time.
We had a
Yeah.
heartbreaker one time. We were trolling right at sunset, and it was just beautiful. We were all looking out at the back of the boat, and we seen the biggest big eye I've ever seen in person shoot out of the water and belly flop on a sterling wide tracker. And we were like, no, never came tight. Never seen the fish again. Oh, we were
Oh, that's
heartbroken.
brutal.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Those wide trackers just deliver like crazy. I mean, we can't keep fish off them.
They
No matter
do.
where we go. Even down
Yeah.
here, they deliver. It's just when you get into like those bigger fish or billfish and stuff like that, it's the last thing you want to hook them on because the chance of landing them just goes down significantly.
It does. I mean, if you every year I'm meticulous with my stuff. I mean, I fish strictly Sterling bars. Sterling's been a great company for us. They work with us. We do a lot of product testing and stuff as well with them, and it's been a great partnership for a long time now. And Steve's been great. So if I have an issue, I go to Steve and I'll be like, hey, look, here's what I've seen. Here's what's going on. Like, is something other people are seeing? Whatnot. But
Well, I'm not talking like a quality aspect. I'm just saying like when fish jump, like billfish and stuff,
oh
like
yeah,
you get like big mahi they can have so much more
Yeah, there's
leverage and
big
just throw
mice. They
that
tend
lure.
to, they do throw that stuff, and billfish are tough with them, but the billfish do love them. I will say that.
Yeah.
White
Yeah,
marlins
we've
do
had
like them
marlin
things.
behind them so many times. Like, it's like, hey, let's pull these teasers in and let's pull the hooks off these things and send them out instead.
Yeah, yeah, we've done that in tournaments in the past. Use them as teasers.
So with your wide trackers, are you using the ones with the larger squids or bulb squids, or using like the small, like 6-inch machine head ones? We usually tend to go with like the 6-inch machine head wide trackers. 18-inch bars seem to run the best for us on our boat in a
Yeah.
wake. Just because they match the conditions, they match our wake, and we don't have to worry about them flipping as often.
I do so I'll fish both. I really honestly I don't fish too many of the machine ones. Most everything I do is all the bulb squids. I don't know if it's just habit or what, but I tend to gravitate towards the bulb squids personally. Depending on how big, like, first couple trips of the year, I'll have a mix of both the 9-inch squids and the 6-inch squids out there. And depending on what's in their bellies, so when we get back to the boat and whatnot, I'll look and see and what caught better, and see what I'm gonna do for the next day or the next trip or whatever. If their bellies are full of tiny squids, I'm gonna put the big squid bars away and just fish the 6-inch squids. If they got bigger squids, I'll fish the bigger squid bars.
Now, what size Who Magics are you usually gravitating towards?
The 2 ounce. 2 ounce is like kind of my go-to. They pull great. You can fish a variety of sizes of baits with them. They can be a little tricky to get them to run, but not that bad. I mean, I've had some mates over the past few years that, aren't the greatest with bait rigging, and, they could get them to swim.
Do you have a color preference at all?
Blue and white. Blue and white's probably one of my better colors.
Do you think
Or a
that
pink.
changes through the year?
No. I don't know. Every year's different, actually. I feel like, you know, I always have one out there, There's always a blue and white out there. A lot of times, usually there's always a pink head with all crystal. That's another favorite of mine.
Mine as well. Pink
And
is
then,
super
yeah,
hot down here in South Carolina. I know in New Jersey we couldn't
yeah, up
carry
here
off
too.
of purple and black,
Yeah.
and down
North
here
Carolina,
nothing.
that's one of my, North Carolina, that's definitely my go-to every day. Like, do not change it. That's in my left long or right long. It don't matter what side, as long as it's out there.
Yeah. Now, fishing with you, I noticed something that not a lot of fishermen that I fished with in the past have done, and it's worked tremendously well for all the fish that we caught. And it actually changed my opinion on how tight my drag should be. Specifically, when we're trolling and lines are up in the riggers, you run your lines really tight. And we had no missed strikes at all over probably 30 fish. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things we have occasionally down here. We usually run some pretty loose drags, not so loose that your bird's nesting or anything, but what made you choose that? Is that how you always ran it, or how did you get
It's just kind of
to
how I was
doing?
taught. Yeah, it's just kind of how I was taught to do it. You take things and you kind of tweak things. Um, I started out fishing even heavier, actually, and I feel like it was heavier, and I started backing it off a little bit. Like, we used to set our drags at 28, 26 to 28 pounds. Now I'm like 24 to 26. And then, when we're fishing, the reels that we use, I use Akumas, and the Makairas on the side of the thing there's it says strike. So I put my lever drag at the E of the strike, and it's usually around 18 to 20 pounds on the button or on the bite. So that's been a pretty good method for me. I've found that, I don't lose as many fish. We hook good hook sets, It's been a good spot for me, and that's kind of what I like. We're set up for that pressure, the lines and stuff that we run, and it's set up for that. So
And what size braid are you usually running on your reels?
all my 50s are 130-pound hollow core. Um, and then my 30s, I fish 100-pound.
Awesome. And just throwing it out there, I know that you have a state record. You want to tell us about it? This is a really good
trash
one. It's
fish
a
record.
very prestigious state record to
Oh yeah,
hold.
we're very proud of this one. We're very proud of that one. The false albacore for the state of Delaware. Yeah,
Was it?
man, now you're gonna test my memory. I think it was around 27 pounds.
That is
That's a
a
big
whopper.
faulty.
I bet that was a
Yeah.
good eater when you got it.
No,
It's so
no. It was
funny
actually funny
to.
though. Like we were fishing inshore, like some of the inshore lumps, and there was a couple boats chunking. They were anchored up chunking, and I was trolling, and we were catching yellowfins trolling, and they weren't catching anything. But we were getting a mix of false albacore in there, and this thing hit a long rigger. And usually the false albacores, they all eat plastics, like religiously. They will eat the plastics. You almost never catch them on ballyhoo, I feel like, at least inshore. And I had a long rigger go down, and it was screaming. I mean, just dumping it like a yellowfin would. And I was like, ah, cool, yellowfin bite. And we get it up next to the boat, and I'm like, holy crap, look at that thing. It's huge. Get the gift. My mate looked at me like I had 4 heads. I said, that thing's a state record. It's gotta be. Gaff it. Get it in the boat. And we got back, and it blew the state record away before. I mean, I think it was like 6 pounds heavier or something like that. It was just a good laugh, you know.
That's
But
awesome.
eh,
That's hilarious. And aside from the state records, you guys just tear it up in tournaments. You want to tell us about
yeah.
some of your tournament winnings in the recent past?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a great tournament record over the past few years. It kind of started when I was doing stuff with Mark and the guys on the Blue Runner up in Jersey, and I learned a lot from him and whatnot, and kind of a lot of the tactics that he uses in tournaments, and kind of applied them in ways to me and whatnot. But we've had great success in the Big Fish Classic at Ocean City. What else? The White Marlin Open, I've had a few good years in. We placed the last 2 years for some money. Wish it would have been a little bit more, but hey,
What's
it
your
is what it
biggest
is.
payout amount?
Like right around 200,000, just under 200,000, one tournament. We had that in the Big Fish Classic a couple years ago.
And can people charter you for tournaments?
Yeah, yeah. So this year I'm actually fully booked for all the tournaments. I'm pretty happy about that. It's fun. I enjoy fishing the tournaments actually. It's kind of again, it's like a thrill of the hunt type deal, and the competitiveness. I'm pretty competitive, and I like working with these guys, but also like competing against them. There's a lot of talent out there, and I'm a younger guy, I'm a younger captain, and to go toe to toe with a lot of these guys, it's kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's invigorating, It makes you feel good, So
Yeah, and it's awesome to see you pull in. Like, I was watching the White Marlin Open live feed when you came in this year. I couldn't wait to watch it. I was watching my computer relentlessly that day. I was like, I know he's coming in with the beast. Can't wait to see it.
yeah,
And it was just great to see you come in. Those guys take you very seriously. They know that you're in there as a serious contender for it, and we can't wait to see where you go from here. Like you were saying, there's a lot of good guys out there. We have a lot of them coming on here to talk over the next couple of months, and we're excited for that as
yeah,
well. But we're certainly rooting for you,
yeah.
man.
Thank you.
Now to jump into it, how can people get a hold of your charter? How can they book you? And what are like the best times of year to really get out there to the canyons and catch some fish? I know both times that we went, we came back with big eyes. We came back with boatfuls of yellowfin. I think both times we had to use your huge fish bag. Your boat was completely filled to the top with tunas. And we caught an enormous swordfish. We lost an even bigger one at the boat. And
Yeah.
it was just an outstanding time. I've never seen a boat come back slower than it went out because of fish weight alone. And both times I was on your boat, that was the case. How can people book you and assure that they're going out at like a good time of year?
Yeah. So, I mean, everything is through me directly. I don't use any kind of booking agency or anything. You call me, text me, anytime, preferably before 9 o'clock. But I get people that call me all through the night. But through Facebook
We're
as well. My
talking
Facebook's No Limit Sport
customers,
Fishing.
not ladies.
Well, yeah, customers. Yeah, not customers. I
Ladies,
get
you
people
call
that'll
them all
call
through
me
the
at two,
night.
3 o'clock in the morning at a bar, and it's like, you answer the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you just, you can't even understand what they're saying, But
Hey,
whatever.
as long as they're booking,
But
that's all
yeah,
that matters.
yeah, Yeah, well, usually they don't remember that they booked. That's the problem with those calls. So,
So
but yeah, through Facebook or Instagram.
are you fishing out of Delaware the whole season this year? You'll be there until the fall?
The summertime, yeah. So I'll be here from now till probably the end of September. We'll be traveling a little bit for the tournaments, but I should be here in September, I think. I'm not 100% sure yet.
Do you know offhand like what dates you have open that people can get into? Are there hotels near your boat that they can stay in if they fly out to fish with you?
Yeah, so there's plenty of hotels right in town of in Dewey or Rehoboth. Off the top of my head, the dates that I have open, I don't know. There's a few dates in June. June is usually our better tuna fishing month. June and early July. I do have a few dates still in June open, July as well. And then once we get into like later part of August or later part of July and into August, it's pretty much all tournaments. I have a couple dates open there too, but most of it's all tournament wise,
And
tournament
are
fishing.
most of your trips like the overnight 36-hour trips?
No, so actually most of my trips here in Delaware are all mostly day trips. We usually leave at like 2:30 and get back around 5 or 6.
Perfect. And what kind of stuff should people bring when they book you? Obviously, no coolers, no spray sunscreen, stuff like that. Are there any things that you're like, hey, this is good to have? They can leave their crappy gear.
Not really. I mean, usually the only thing I tell people to bring is if it's raining, bring rain gear, food and drink. We got plenty of different amenities on the boat. We got a fridge and stuff to keep things cold. We got, microwave, toaster oven, air fryer, all kinds of stuff to keep things, if you want to heat stuff up, so just food, drink, rain gear. I kind of try and tell people to wear, closed-toed shoes, just, but nobody ever really does. It's the summertime. My mates half the time are walking around with bare feet, so.
I'm a flip flop guy or bare feet. And then I
Yeah.
seen a video recently of a guy getting bit by a wahoo through one of those super tough boots. And I
Through the
was
boot?
like, oh man.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
Those
And
things.
after that day, I'm a boots guy.
Yeah, those things, they got some teeth on them, that's for sure.
Yeah, ruiner.
So you got to watch them.
Yeah, believe it or not, wahoo fishing. One of my friends, Lance and Chase, we just had him on last weekend, actually turned me on to using mono leader. I always thought like, oh, there's no way. After fishing up in New Jersey for most of my life, coming down here to fish, I was like, oh, it's got to be steel cable or like regular steel leader. I went out with those guys a bunch and I was like, how many of these lures are you losing? None at all. And since I switched, we haven't lost one either.
That's crazy.
150-pound mono, and it's been perfectly fine. You just have to be proactive on changing out the leader every time you feel a chafe. But most of the time, the wahoo doesn't even get its teeth on the leader at all, and it's improved my bite ratio significantly.
Okay. Yeah, typically I fish wire for the most part. Some of my stuff I have cable on, but mostly it's all wire, number 11 wire or something like that, 14.
Now, do you run a lot of deep divers for tuna specifically up north?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say a lot. Typically, I'll fish one every day, pretty much, though. Kind of just depends on. It depends on where I'm at too. Like if I'm in the canyon, I'm fishing one every day. Inshore, I don't always fish one. It just kind of depends on where I'm at.
So, being a charter captain, do you have any funny customer stories? I know when we were on your boat, we have a really sad customer story. We actually we hooked a 500-pound swordfish. Dante and I fought it all night. Customer comes out, asks for the reel, reels it for the last 15 minutes, breaks it off at the boat. We could have cried. Luckily, immediately after that, we turned it around like a 300-pound swordfish. But do you have anything else that's funny or any other kind of stories about it?
I've seen some stuff. I mean, I had a customer one time actually when I was on the waterproof. I guess he had talked a buddy of his into coming on an open boat trip to fill a second spot. And I don't think he told the guy that it was an overnighter. So like the guy was asking me like, when are we going back? And I'm like, we just got here. Oh, he was seasick the entire time too. So that wasn't helping things. So like he got real pissed at his buddy real quick. And they almost started throwing fists in the back, and we had to kind of break them apart and like be like, all right, you go over there, you go over there. And I don't think they talked very much after that. I think we pretty much we were back in the boat in the slip, and I don't think I had dock lines on the boat. And the one guy had his stuff around his shoulders, and he was on the dock before I even had the thing tied up. Yeah, That was a special one. He was definitely a little upset, but
I always think it's hilarious when you're out in the ocean and the customers are insisting on keeping everything over the rail, like they're feeding the homeless or something. And as soon
yeah.
as you're back to the dock and you pull out the 1,000 pounds of fish, and then suddenly they just want 1 gallon Ziploc bag. How often do you run into that kind of stuff?
I don't see it as much here. So everything for me goes through all the fish cleaners here in Delaware. So I don't really see it as much here. When I fish out of Jersey, we see it relatively often. You know, guys will be like, "Oh yeah, we want our three. We want our three. We got room. We can do it. We could take it." And then like you get back to the dock and you start cutting, and it's like, you know, oh wait, we only brought like two like 60 quart coolers, and there's 400 pounds of yellowfin laying here, and they just have no room for it. So you know, we'll either figure something out to do with it, give it away to other people, give it away to the dock neighbors, something like that. You know, people they just they don't understand how much meat you actually get off of one, say, 50-pound yellowfin. It's a lot of meat. You know, if I'm taking home fish for myself, I take home a chunk about this big. That's about it. You know, I mean, just enough for like me for a day or two. You know, or I don't like freezing it personally. You know, I'll take just enough home to eat it fresh, and that's it.
And that same thing happened on the trips that I was with you, where we brought home like a 300 pound swordfish, and everybody's like, oh, everyone's going to eat swordfish. And then we got back there, and it's like, wow, this is really a lot of swordfish.
A lot. It's a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
sword.
And I mean, it was hours of cutting that stuff at the dock, and people are ready to go home. They're just like, oh, I just want to take this one and leave and get out of here. And everyone's tired because they got drunk and then didn't sleep and were throwing up. So, you personally, when you see people come down the dock and they're like the case of beer guys, where like every single guy's got his own personal case of beer, do you dread that or love it?
It depends if I know the crew. So actually, I've some buddies of mine. We used to fish. We used to do some overnighters together and day trips, even like inshore trips. And you know, every time they came on the boat, it was you know for an 8 hour trip. You know, say like tog fishing, it was a 30 rack a person. Like before we even left the dock, like we didn't leave without a 30 rack a person. You know, to go
2:30
on a
in the morning,
canyon trip,
right?
it was like, all right, let's bring, you know, okay, 8 cases or, you know what I mean? Like they prepped, you know, but yeah, I've had other groups where, you know, they show up to the boat at 2:30 and they're still drunk from being at the bar at 1, you know, and unfortunately I did have a group that we had to turn around with because I couldn't handle it. The guy was stumbling all over the place. One of the guys was stumbling all over the place. He put his head into the wall, and actually one guy actually fell forward and broke one of my windows with his head, you know, so it was just I wasn't dealing with it, so we turned back, you know. It sucks for me because I feel like a bad person charging them for that, but at the same time, I could have taken another group that, you know, I could have had
Wanted to
still had
beer
my
garden.
day, you know, my pay. I mean, that's this is my living. You know, for them to not take it seriously, it kind of is a little upsetting. But
I remember the one time we went out, we were filming you and Magic Tail, and the one guy got so drunk, and then you go down to sleep, he's sleeping in your bed. Like, do you run into that often?
yeah, unfortunately, I do. You know, I kind of like, you know, in the summertime, I kind of let the guys do whatever they need to do, where they can lay where they want to lay down there. You know, I mean,
You were a good sport
unless we're
about it,
like
though. You came back up to the bridge, and you're
yeah.
like, well, I'm sleeping up here now. Turn the music off.
Yeah, usually I'll get my beanbag and I'll just sleep on the bridge, you know. It's not that big a deal for me, honestly. I just change the sheets when I get back.
So, what was the biggest fish you've ever had a customer catch on your boat?
Boy. Biggest fish in general? Blue marlin with a customer.
That one in the White Marlin Open that you guys weighed?
That was like I think we weighed that one, it was like 500 pounds. I had one a couple years ago, it was like 620. A couple years before that, 620.
Did you guys keep it?
It died during the fight, yeah.
A lot of times
Yeah,
those
that
big ones
happens.
get tail wrapped in the die.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened, you know. I mean, I'm not really set up for marlin fishing either, so I mean, it was on a 50 wide, and it was a while.
I was on a boat
It
one
was a battle.
time. We had one get tail wrapped and die, and then it just sunk to like 800 feet, and it took hours to just crank it up from the bottom, like
Creeping it
dead
up.
weight. Oh
Yep.
yeah, it was a terrible couple hours to get it up to the boat. And what has been your personal biggest fish that you've ever caught, whether commercial bluefin fishing or just fun fishing in general?
Bluefin. Bluefin's definitely been my biggest fish so far. We had one this winter was probably about 900 pounds whole. Definitely, I think it was the biggest one I've ever caught.
And how long of a fight was it?
That one wasn't bad. The one with Dante wasn't bad. It was about 2 hours. We had one a couple weeks before that dressed a little bit lighter. It was a 660 dresser, and that fish was just mean. I got something about those North Carolina bluefins when they get into that tide and the current and the Gulf Stream. It just they get mean. They lay underneath the current and just fight. We fought this fish for almost 8 hours, and it just was so green still at the boat. It actually, when we tied it off on the cleat, it actually was flipping and kicking so hard that it broke a chunk of my rub rail off. I mean, this thing, it was just mean. It was so mean. I never got it into a circle. It was black backing on the surface, and I was kind of like driving the boat, like kind of next to it, and like in a turn doing one of these, and I had Shane, my one mate Shane, I think he was on the rod, or Vic was on the rod, and he was like pulling on the rod, and one of the other guys was like outside the rod tip, like pulling on the line like this, and I was just throwing the dart at it from the side, and we actually got a pretty good dart shot on it, and it still didn't give up. I think we fought on the dart line for 15-20 minutes too. So just a
Speaking of
mean
dart
fish.
shots, on that 705 dress that you have, that's probably the laziest dart shot I've ever seen on a fish.
That one there, actually, I think it was a different one that you were thinking of. That one there, the one I think you're thinking of was like a 450 dresser. And the market was flooded, and I was kind of like, the fishing was so good. Do I cut this one off and try and find one smaller? And I was like, is it over 100? If it's over 100, I really don't want it. And I'm like looking at it and trying to size it up and see if I really wanted to kill this one, and like looking at the shape and everything. And finally I decided, when the thing was like nosing into the back of the boat, I was like, screw it, and stuck the dart into it. But it was definitely a very lazy dart shot. I look back at that video and I just kind of laugh, because I'm just like thinking about it the entire time. I could have thrown the dart 30 times, but I like to
I think
wait in
that video
general
has like
so I get a good
30,000
clean shot.
views. That video
Yeah.
has like 30,000 views on our YouTube right now. It's just the laziest dart shot ever. And it's
I'm
only been
sure
up for like
everyone's
3
like,
days.
what is this guy doing?
Like, it's an
Look at
enormous
this
fish.
Yahoo. He has no idea what he's doing. Meanwhile, I'm like trying to like size the fish up. I know exactly what I'm doing, but
So, do they pay different for different length fish? You mentioned that, like, hey, I was looking for one that was smaller. Do smaller fish generally pay more? Obviously, you want one with more fat, like a rounder fish, not like a long, skinny one. What kind of factors are you looking for in these fish to assure, like, hey, this is going to be a good market value?
so yeah, I mean, like, I wouldn't say they pay differently for sizes. Just like at that point in time, it was towards the end of the season. We had like a 5 or 6 day weather window where it was like slick calm, and everybody was out there on their little 23-foot center consoles, and everybody was bringing fish back every day. Like, the fishing was just so good. So the market was flooded, and usually when the market gets flooded, and like especially down there, a lot of the fish are big. So the smaller fish move easier. Even in a general market, that the smaller fish tend to move easier. And you definitely feel like what I've seen over the few years, you get more money per pound for the smaller fish, but it kind of evens itself out with the big fish. You get less money, but you make up for it in weight with a bigger fish. At that point in time, the market was really saturated, and I had talked to Bubba, our buyer, and he was like, if you can find a smaller one, great. If not, it is what it is. So I was trying to find a smaller fish. I mean, the fishing was so good. But I think when we caught that fish, that was a part of a triple. So we had, plenty of bites that morning.
So, are they selling most of the fish stateside, or are they sending them overseas?
Yeah. Now, I know, I think Bubba told me they don't even send anything overseas anymore. He said that the domestic market is pretty strong nowadays, which is good. I mean, these fish, what a lot of people don't realize is these fish, they turn color over time. So, like, you only have such a small window to get them off the boat, package them, ship them to where they're going to be, or ship them to, a different facility. Like, a lot of the fish from North Carolina go to Boston or New York, but like if they're going, some of them go out to Texas. So if they're going to Texas, they usually go to somewhere else, get repacked, and then flown out there or out to the West Coast, wherever they're going. But sometimes, like I had a fish this year, in 2 days, it turned brown. It was kind of like nothing I did, nothing the buyers did, just crap luck, you know?
So they don't like send you a check for it or anything. They just say like, "Hey, it turned brown, no good."
Not all of it turned brown, so there was still parts that were usable. So that, I think we got like $2 or $3 a pound for it. It's one of my worst fish actually this year.
So walk us through the process, kind of. You get one of these fish next to the boat, you harpoon it, get it in the boat. Sometimes easier said than done. Like that big fish, like you guys had like 5 or 6 guys down there pulling on it. It's moving an inch at a time. What kind of time frames is it between getting the head off, getting it gutted, ice down, so forth?
The faster the better, honestly. I mean, from the time I dart the fish, if it depends on where I'm at. So, like, one of the benefits of North Carolina is you're fishing the Gulf Stream, and a lot of times the temperature break on the Gulf Stream, some days it can be as much as almost 30 degrees. So, the inshore waters are 45, 50 degrees, something like that. Where we're fishing is usually 70, 75. So, if I'm really close to the edge and I can drag my fish into the cold water, that'll cool that fish down faster. The faster you get it cooled down, the better off you are. The better your price per pound is going to be. The better everything is. The better quality of meat. The best outcome possible is to cool it as fast as you can. So I've seen guys that'll put the swim hook in them and drag them to swim them to bring them back to life, and then they'll bleed them and whatnot, and that works. It does. I've just found personally, you drag them either forward or backwards. You bleed them out real. I don't usually drag them more than 30 minutes. You drag them, you bleed them, you get them in the boat. As soon as you get them in the boat, you start cutting the head off, cut the guts out. I cut the head completely off. I think it's the best way to do it. You could pack the gullet full of ice. You could spine the fish, which kills all the nerves. I see a lot of these guys that are, commercial fishermen that, they're posing with the thing on Facebook and this and that. And it's like, the thing still got its head on it. They got no ice on it. They got no rice paper on it. They're like it's kind of messing up the fishery for guys that truly need the paycheck for a living. There are guys out there that do this for a living. And when they don't take care of those fish, those things, it floods the market with shit fish. It brings the value of good fish down, it doesn't matter if it's got good fat or not. If there's a bunch of crap fish on the market, it's going to bring a good fish value down. So it kind of really, getting that thing cleaned right and cleaned out good is a big part of, doing it right.
And do you prefer commercial fishing or your charter trips? Like if you had to choose, you could only do one, which one would you choose?
I like the charter fishing, honestly. It's a guaranteed paycheck every day. So it's not like, if you break a fish off or you pull a fish off, you're not watching your paycheck swim away. Plus, that end of it, but it's also like, I like meeting new people. I like to talk. I like to, bullshit with people, learn about people. I like to mess with people while they're on the boat. That aspect of things too is always fun. Like that's what makes the day go easier. That's what makes, it more fun for me versus just strictly fishing, so it definitely helps.
And now one of my questions, Dante came out with these Magic Tail Outfitters. They're these squid, I forget what he calls them, but it's like the squid stingers. You can run on single or you can run on. Do you run those often, or are you mostly Who Magics, regular stingers behind stuff? We've had some tremendous luck with these squid lures here. They work really great. Single, they kind of run like a cedar plug. We also swap them out on a lot of our spreader bars. They work really nice. Is that something you've been utilizing or using at all?
Yeah, absolutely. We use them more. I use them more on the back of a bar than I will single lures. I don't know, again, if it's just habit or, something that I like better, but the action of those things behind a bar really, especially a tracker bar, your tracker bar as it's going through the water is kind of doing this all the time because it's pulling outwards. It'll skip and kind of pull, which creates those squids are going back there like this. And when you get that motion behind, in front of that, it really kind of makes that squid, I don't know what you want to call it, that
I
squid
think
thing
he calls them
kind of
foo-foo
dart back
squid.
and forth. The Fuku squid, yes. Yeah, that's what it is. So it really kind of makes it dart back and forth. Very similar to a cedar plug or like Sterling has the cedar flex stingers. Very similar.
Yes. I
They
heard
work
that
well as well.
those cedar bar chains they came out with are tremendous. Everybody's been telling me in the chat, so like, oh my gosh, we can't keep fish off these things.
And
Yeah. No, they're
you're
great.
running cedar
It's like
plugs?
what's that?
You're running cedar plugs also?
I do. It's kind of one of those things that, most guys like laugh about and joke about. I mean, actually my dad, he's very old school. He didn't do a lot of tuna fishing when I was growing up. I mean, we only had a 23-foot center console, but he was always, oh, you got to run the cedar plugs and daisy chains. It's like what he did back in the day. And, I don't know. It works, I mean, it works. I pull one almost every day, honestly. We probably
SKS
catch
Charleston
20
pulls
fish a
a
year
ton
on.
of them. They swear by them. They love the cedar
Yeah,
plug. Shout out to Captain
yeah.
Chase, the cedar plug master. He's gonna be the first person sponsored by Cedar Plug. I heard they're thinking about renaming it to the Chase Plug.
There you go.
Now, do you pull any of like the old school tuna feathers or anything like that? Is there anything other than the standard stuff everybody's using that you're like, hey, I always have one of these out? We use a lot of daisy chains down here, and daisy chains work great.
Yeah, a lot of different chains. I mean, like, again, like with the plastic stuff, a lot of my plastic stuff's all Sterling. We'll pull, the Crazy 8 chains. We'll pull the Cedar Rain chains. A cedar plug on its own, like a solo cedar plug or something like that. Or I can't really say that there's anything like crazy that I pull that,
Are you a dredge guy?
no one else does. Am I what?
A dredge guy?
Yes and no. Um, It kind of depends. Sometimes I pull one, sometimes I don't. Usually in the tournaments I do. Whether it helps or not, I don't know. Some guys swear by them. Some guys are just, I put it out there once in a while.
We're give or take on it. A lot of times we'll pull a dredge, and then it seems like on dredge days we have all kinds of teasers and stuff out there as well, like off the cleats of the boat. I don't personally see
Yeah.
any more or less fish. Like if we're marlin fishing, absolutely dredges are perfect. But like if we're just out
Yeah.
there for tuna and wahoo and stuff, it's just an extra thing to have to pull out of the way.
Exactly. I mean, with the LP rigged up in the rigger, it's not that big a deal. You just run over, you push the two buttons, and it pulls itself out of the water. It's not that big a deal. But getting it set up sometimes is a little bit of a hassle. And then, you got customers that want to walk all over things. And, now they're walking all over the lines and stepping on the squids. And, you try and avoid as much of that stuff as possible. But, some groups are really good about it. Some groups are just not. So
I was on a Viking during the Nantucket Big Game Challenge, and thankfully I wasn't driving at the time. And the owner ran the dredge through a weed patch. It ripped the outrigger right off the side of the boat. A brand new Viking. It was a heartbreaker, man.
that's an expensive fix,
Yeah, and what was worse is we were in contention in the tournament. We knocked out all of the tuna ahead of time. All we had to do was do the billfish aspect of it. It was day one, so like we were sitting pretty. And then one outrigger off, and it was like, well, we can't billfish one outrigger. This is ridiculous.
I've broken a cable in a tournament on a really rough day. Matter of fact, it was 2 years ago in the White Marlin Open. It was pretty rough out, and I snapped a cable, and my outrigger was flopping all over the place. So I ended up just pulling it up, and I fished with one rigger the rest of the day. It was kind of a hassle, but I've been there.
Do you have a favorite tournament that you fish?
I would say probably the Huck, the Big Fish Classic. I like the time frame. You get a 36-hour window to fish. The Open is fun, but I'm a tuna guy, and the tuna fishing, like, your prime time is dusk and dawn, so you can't really fish prime time when you're fishing those tournaments. You can't even put the lines in the water till what, 8 or 8:30 it is, 8 o'clock I think it is now. But with the Huck you can fish, sun up, sundown, sun up. So you get 3 shots. So it's definitely, it's a fun tournament. There's not as much money in it, but it is a good tournament. It's got a good turnout every year, and it's getting bigger and bigger every year. It's a fun one.
Now, do you have a favorite fish to target, like your absolute favorite? Like if you could go and fish by yourself or with like your own crew that you hand select for one kind of fish, what would it be?
I mean, I guess if it's good, big eyes, I do love catching them. They're fun to catch. They're tricky to catch sometimes, It's hard getting them to bite. And they're mean. They are mean fish. I always said if they got up, the size of giants, you probably wouldn't catch very many of them. You got a 100-inch big eye. Look out. That is going to be one mean fish.
They'd have to make a reel bigger than 130.
Yeah, seriously. You'd be fighting them out of the gunnel like a bluefin, really, So, but yeah, they probably would be my number one target. Again, it comes back to the competitiveness. It's a challenge. I like the challenge of catching them.
Now, when you guys are commercial bluefin fishing, are you guys fighting out of the gunnel, or are you putting on belts and harnesses and stuff?
Nah, everything's out of the gunnel or even off the green stick, off the bandit reel. Those are the days that my mates love. When I'm like, I just put the stick up because they don't have to crank anything in. It's all hydraulic.
Now, do you prefer the green stick versus traditionally catching fish?
I like the bite of the green stick. The bite is cool. As far as catching them, not really. I like catching them rod and reel. It's kind of better. It's better to, I guess it's controversial. Some guys say it's better to catch them rod and reel because you don't burn them, less chance of burning them and whatnot. But sometimes you're on them for 7-8 hours. You don't really see that with the green stick.
Now, is the hookup ratio better with the green stick? Like, it's more likely you're going to get one, or is it like a noticeable difference?
No, I wouldn't say it's, more likely that you're going to get one. The problem you have with the green stick a lot of times is, these fish down in Carolina, every year they keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it seems like. So you got to keep beefing it up, and like the hooks we're using, a lot of times we're doubling the hooks up. Some guys have some of the old school needle eye mustads that, they're 1/4-inch steel hooks, 1/4-inch gauge hooks, and they won't straighten out. But if you use a regular mustad, and I guess it's what, a 7698 DT, like a 2X strong, if you put one of them in there and you get a 500-600 pounder air out on the stick, chances are it's going to straighten that hook right out. But a lot of the times you get multiples, and when you get one fish going this way, the other fish going this way, that bite is so violent they can only go so far because everything's 6, 7, 8, 900 pound mono, and they'll snap the line pretty easily. Actually, so you can lose a lot, but usually when you hook them, you don't lose them. Again, you're fighting them on, my stuff's on 900 pound mono, so when you hook them, once they're there, you really ain't losing them.
You guys use a 900 pound mono leader?
Yeah. I had 2 break off this year on 700, so I bumped it up to 900.
And are you guys using 130s?
No, that's on the green stick. That's on the green stick. On my 130s, I'm fishing high seas 175.
What's the longest fight you had with one of these tunas?
8 hours. 8 hours, about the longest one.
And that's on the bluefin?
Yeah, on the bluefin.
Okay, so on your charter trips, what's the longest fight you had that a client was just like, man, this sucks, I'm done with this, I'm going back in, I'm gonna go drink a beer,
I think I was on that trip. There was a guy that fought like a 50-pound yellowfin for like 3 hours. Remember that? That guy looked like he was gonna have a heart attack. He was a trooper though.
Yeah.
He pulled the whole thing by himself, but it was the longest fight I've ever seen. Like, we thought he had a big eye on a chunk bite. It came up and it was like a 50-pound fish. He fought that thing. It seemed like days, man.
Yeah, I had a guy back when I had the old boat. We caught like a, I don't know, 100, 110, 120 pound big eye. And this guy was like on his knees, like huffing and puffing, throwing up, sweat pouring down his face. Like, I thought he was having a heart attack. And I was like, dude, give up the rod. Please, please give up the rod. And he wouldn't. He was so persistent. And like, I don't know how we caught this fish, but he finally got it to the boat after like 40 minutes. And I was like, thank God, because I thought this guy was going to die in the back of my boat. But yeah, that was one of the longer ones. But we've gone, I don't know. I had a customer actually, it wasn't a customer, it was us. It was me and my mates. We were almost 3 hours on a big eye, but it was a 260 big eye. It got tail wrapped, and we were just, again, cranking up dead weight. It was in a tournament, so I was kind of trying to take my time a little bit too. So that kind of helped things, or slowed things down, I should say. So we've had a couple of longer ones, but usually it's just taking our time. Rather take my time and get the fish than I would break it off and not have another shot. You know what I mean?
Now, when you're out there, what charter boats specifically, you can give them shout outs, do you work with to network in your area that you're like day in, day out, like, hey, this guy's very helpful to me, and so forth?
Tommy Daffin on the Fishing Fever out of Cape May, I talk to every day. Chris Little on the Talking Trash. Mark on the Marley. Mark de Blasio on the Blue Runner. You know, there's a few different guys, really. There's so many guys to mention, honestly. But we all kind of work together. Who else? I can't. Timmy on the Bodacious out of Wildwood. He's another one that we talk to every day. But it's a big group of guys, and we all kind of work together. A lot of the Ocean City, Maryland charter boats, we all kind of work
Now,
together.
are you usually heading north or south when you get to the canyons? Are you heading up towards like the Hudson? Are you heading down south?
It depends. For me, like out of Delaware, my range is kind of like the Lindy to the Norfolk on a day trip, and really the Lindy is kind of really pushing it. It's 100 miles for me, but I'll go north or south. I mean, there's been trips where I am way further than I should be. We did an overnighter last year. It was actually one of the first trips I did last year, and I was, God, I think by the time when I think at one point I was 140 from the dock. We were almost, up in the toms. What am I doing up here? Why did I come up this far? But, I mean, it was worth it. There wasn't nothing going on down south. There was nothing closer to home. So we went up there, we caught, we did what we had to do, and we came back. We were one of the few boats that came back with fish, So I don't mind spending the money and fuel, to put my guys on fish. I'd rather, burn the money and have a good trip than just take guys for a boat ride. I don't really care for that.
Now, where are the best like hot spots in your area that you suggest these guys to head out to? I know you guys got this super hot spot called the Hot Dog out there.
The deli.
What other spots you guys hit?
I mean, again, it just depends on what's going on. A lot of it's water related, a lot of it's bait related. A lot of the inshore lumps, you got the 19 fathom lump, you got Massey's, you got the 12 fathom lump, you got the hot dog, the hamburger, the wrench, you got, the parking lot, and you get all these different inshore lumps and stuff that, a lot of that stuff is what we would fish like second, third week of July through August, inshore chunking, and a lot of that's on like late leader stuff, which kind of sucks, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I know that's our ticket when we used to chunk out of New Jersey's, just sizing down that leader. And like a lot of times, you
Yeah.
like 40, 50 pound, you're not getting a bite. You switch it down to 30 pound, you get it. But then it's like, now we're in for a fight. It's going to be an all day.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, and again, these fish are, some of these fish inshore that time of year, they're bigger yellowfins. I think it was 2-3 years ago we were catching, there was a few 120 pound yellowfins floating around in there, and you're catching them on 20 pound, 30 pound leader. It's 2-3 hours on one fish. It sucks, but you got to do what you got to do to get the bite, and then you got to do what you got to do to land the thing. I know for customers it can get frustrating sometimes because you're on the thing for so long, but some guys, they can handle it. Some guys, it's struggle. It just depends on, your angling skills.
And now with chunking for yellowfin, what are your go-to hooks and what are your go-to baits? I know I personally like the Ring Gorilla hooks by Owner, usually in like a 4.0. What kind of hooks are you usually using and like size-wise? And what's like your go-to bait? I know a lot of times people are quick to go buy flats of bunker, but then it brings in sharks. It creates a whole other problem because you're fighting these fish on like leader. They're out in water so long, you get sharked up like crazy.
Yeah. So typically I fish it's a mustad hook. Oh God, you're going to test my memory here. A Demon Perfect Circle is what I use. I forget the number. It's like I'd have to look up the number, but it's a mustad circle hook. 6.0, I think it is. 6.0 or 7.0. Nothing special to it. It's a good wide gap circle hook. It's got a pretty decent wire to it. So it's super sharp too, and I've had really good luck with it. It's not too heavy that it weights like a bait down, because a lot of times we get a lot of bites on our working lines. So, Typically, I'm putting it in a butterfish. That's mostly what we fish: butterfish or sardines. Sometimes we'll get bunker, something like that. But for the most part, it's either butterfish or sardines.
Yeah, we usually chunk flats of butterfish and then feed sardines out on the working lines.
Yeah.
Just because it's
Yep.
so much easier to hide the hooks in sardines.
It is. Sometimes you get it's tough. Sometimes you get bad sardines, or they're soft, or sardines are
Yeah.
soft in general, but sometimes it can get a little bit tough, and you really want to hide that hook good too. I mean, some guys they get lucky, and they'll slap the thing through the nose or slap it through the eyes or something like that, and they'll send it out and get bites. But for me, it just seems
Those kind
like
of
the
guys, I
more that
gotta
thing's
like hide
hidden.
it, and if they see wire, like tie
Yeah.
the mouth shut, the fish aren't biting.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the same way. Put the thing in the mouth, out the gills, and then back in the gills, and hide it in the belly.
It's exactly what I
That's
do.
Yep,
Rubber
and
band a
that's
weight on it, like a sacrificial weight, just to get it down. Snaps off as soon as a fish bites.
yeah, yeah. Some I don't. Depends on what's going on. Sometimes we'll put a weighted one out there, but a lot of times anymore, it's just like we'll fish 4 or 5 working lines, and that's really it. We'll put one down deep or one in the middle of the column if we're marking fish down that deep, but for the most part, a lot of it's all working lines, and we'll chunk heavy until we get them up next to the boat, and then once we get them going, we'll just kind of slow our chunks down and keep them up next to the boat. That way there you can just kind of pick them out, and you bring one in, you slap a bait bag on, and slap it out there.
I know a
Keep
lot
them
of
going.
times when we go chunky too, we usually go out there, there's a fleet everywhere because someone told somebody about a bite and then they told 500 other people on Facebook.
Word travels fast.
And then they go, and usually the way that we find success is we pull about a quarter mile because all the fish just scatter outside of there. And we usually find some pretty
Yeah.
good success out there as well.
Yeah, a lot of times getting away from the fleet's helpful. I mean, I've done it many times in the past. I mean, remember a couple years ago, we were on the 19 fathom lump, and everybody and their brother. There had to have been 100 boats on the 19 lump itself, and it's not a small spot, or it's not a big spot. I'm sorry. It's maybe half a mile, something like that. The lump is across. So I think it was actually Tommy Daffin found them kind of to the northeast of the lump, while he was trolling, or he had a bite or two up that way. So I was chunking, and I decided, you know what, let me go see what Tommy's got going on up there. And I went up, and I set the anchor, and we had him right away. I think we caught 7 or 8 fish right away, and a couple boats followed, and it never fails. They see one boat
You
leave,
got
and like
binocular
3 or 4
guys
got to
out
go
there.
investigate.
As soon as someone's hooked up, there's a million boats right on your transom.
And
Trying
it
to hook
never
the
kind
same
of fails.
fish.
Yeah, it can be tough sometimes and frustrating from a charter aspect, but it is what it is. I mean, the ocean, it's not mine, it's not anybody's. So, I
Especially
mean,
you
you're
guys,
working
you're
a certain
so
spot.
recognizable out there. And after so many wins in these tournaments and notoriously coming back to the dock with a ridiculous amount of fish, people know you. Personally, like if I was out there boating and I didn't get a call from you and I seen you out there, I'd be headed your way too. I'd be following you wherever you went.
I've had a few people follow me from the inlet out, and it can get frustrating, but it is what it is. You just kind of deal with it. If it's just a charter, I don't really care so much. If we're tournament fishing, I might take you for a little ride, though.
So I know you have tons of luck overnight sword fishing. I was on your boat. We caught some big ones. What depths are you putting your baits at, like overnight trips? I know usually when I go, I'm putting one at like 200 feet. I'm putting one a little bit shorter than that at like 100 feet with some lights on it. You finding your most success?
Typically 180 and 250 is kind of where I set my stuff, but it also kind of varies a little bit depending on how deep I see the thermocline. I usually put one right under the thermocline or in the thermocline, and then the other one I'll put, down a little deeper. Sometimes if I'm feeling frisky, we'll put a third one out and we'll put it shallow, like 80 feet or 90 feet, something like that. And we've had bites on it, or you get a tuna bite on it. A lot of times you get the tuna bites on that one. But that's typically my go-to depths for nighttime sword fishing.
Are you using eel or squid as bait, or do you have a preferred?
Squid for the most part, or mackerel.
Yeah, I think ours were on Boston mackerel.
Yeah, mackerel's a good bait, especially at night. Usually either squid or a mackerel
I know
if
here
there's live squids around.
we do a lot of daytime sword fishing, and we use a lot of eels just because they're so tough, and we have so much line out. Like we're doing
Yeah.
like 1,500 yards of line out.
Yeah.
And last thing I want to do is have to keep pulling up a bait to check on it because a squid exploded because it got hit once by a swordfish.
Yeah, the squids can be tough. I mean,
And they spin.
I'm if I'm daytiming, I usually like a squid on my tip rod and then like an eel or something on my Bowie rod. That's me.
And then I guess lastly, what kind of advice do you have to give to guys that are thinking like, hey, I want to get into charter fishing or commercial fishing? Obviously, it's an uphill battle getting to where you are. You're one of the best there is to do it. And like, what kind of advice do you have to give to these guys?
Communication is a huge thing. I mean, it takes a lot. I mean, if I'm not out on the water fishing, I'm either at the boat fixing things or, on the phone booking trips or, networking with guys or doing something. It really is a 20-hour a day job, every single day. It never stops. And some days it's 24 hours. It really never stops. I mean, just being truly dedicated, be willing to make that sacrifice and, be willing to be dedicated. I mean, it takes a lot. A lot of guys don't see everything that goes into it. They think, oh, yeah, you just jump on the boat, you turn the key, and you go fishing. You take people out. Well, I just went through almost a month worth of boat work and, I cleaned the after cooler. I had to have a new riser made. I had to, you know, do the all the service work and stuff on the motor. I had to paint the bottom. I sent the prop out. I checked the wheel or checked the shaft. And, there's all kinds of stuff that goes into it. And people don't see that side of things. It takes time. It takes a lot of money. I mean, we just put probably almost close to $20,000 back into the boat in a month, and there's different things that you can do to be more well equipped. There's different things you can do to be more well prepared, but it's all about that sacrifice of time and how willing you are to bust your ass and to learn from guys that are successful and like be willing to change. That's a big thing too, is you got to be willing to change. You learn something from one guy and you learn something from another guy, you kind of bring the two together and have your own idea, and that kind of is, a lot of what I feel like works for me. But, I've had a great mentor over the last few years with Mark and, he's taught me a lot of stuff and I got a hats off to him. He's a great fisherman. So, find yourself someone like that, you can learn from, who's willing to teach you. That is a huge part of it. And I mean, quite honestly, I probably wouldn't be anywhere near where I am without him. He's been huge for me. So,
And what's been like the hardest part of being a charter captain that you found that you run into on like a regular basis? Is it the days when the fish aren't cooperating? Is it the maintenance or just the long hours, or weather conditions, booking?
it's a little bit of everything. The long hours gets to you because you're sacrificing time away from your family, and when you are home with them, you're on the phone a lot. It wears on a relationship. Weather conditions, you gotta find that happy medium where you're comfortable with, your customers are comfortable with, the boat is okay in, there's like a happy medium that you gotta like, I know what I can handle, I know what my boat can handle, but I know what certain customers can handle, if they can handle it or not. Like I had a group last year that was like, oh yeah, we can handle it, we're salty. And they show up with like two young kids and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like really? It's gonna be gnarly out today. Like I don't even want to go. And they're like, oh, we're good. We get 50 miles out and like everyone's puking. And I'm like, dude, come on, man. But there's a lot of that. And then, it's a little bit of everything. It all kind of like works together, but there's a lot of sacrifice in there and dedication. You really
What do
got
you
to
think
bust
the
your ass.
best part of your job is? Like, what makes you the happiest and like keeps you driven to go do this stuff? Because it's not common to know a lot of people that are like, hey, I want to go 100 miles offshore every day of my life.
So, I mean, I guess,
Like, I'm one of those people, so it's hard. A lot of
yeah,
people
I
just
mean,
don't
I would say,
understand it.
No, it is tough. I mean, I get people that are like, "Oh, how far do you go?" And I'm like, depends on what's going on. It could be 50 miles, it could be 5 miles, it could be 100 miles, and they're like, "Oh my god, you go 100 miles offshore?" And it's like their eyes get like this big, and they just don't believe you, or they're like, "Holy crap, how do you do that?" But I would say coming back with like a boatload of fish, seeing your customers happy, they tip well, they rebook for another trip, that kind of stuff. That's what keeps you motivated. Obviously the tournaments and stuff are fun. They're competitive. The payouts are good when you win money in the tournaments. All that stuff. It all goes into keeping you motivated. I mean, there are days when the fishing's slow, and it's like you're up at 2:30. You don't get back, or I'm actually up at 12:30. I don't get back to the house until like 8, 9 o'clock the next night, just to get up at 12:30 again. And it's just when the fishing's slow, it does wear on you. But that's where you have to have that dedication and that motivation to keep going. Especially when it's like, okay, I know it's going to be rough today, but my group just drove 4 hours to get here. They really want to go. You might only catch 2 or 3 fish, or you might crush them. If you crush them, great. They have a great time. Like I had a group last year. They drove down from Wilmington, Delaware. It's about a 2-hour drive. And I told them before the weather wasn't bad, but I told them the fishing was slow. And I said, look, we can go, we can reschedule. They wanted to go, and we had a great trip. I think we caught like 14 or 15 yellowfins. I was blown out of the water. I had no anticipation of catching that. It had been really, really slow up until then, and it just broke wide open one day. But all that stuff kind of keeps you motivated, keeps you coming back.
Oh, yeah, and you have a great crew. I know Shane, I've fished with him as well. Excellent guy.
Yeah.
Excellent fisherman as well. If you could pick one fisherman out of anyone to go on a trip, who would it be? That you'd be like, we're going to definitely slay with this person. Is there anyone particular that stands out?
Shane, I mean, Shane's been great for me. I mean, he knows what he's doing.
I mean, other
he
than your
handles.
crew, like if you could add an additional guy.
Definitely not Dante.
Yeah,
Wow. I mean, I guess it depends on what I'm after, Like I enjoy fishing with my dad. I don't get to fish with him very much anymore. So, I mean, if it was like a luxury trip or something like that, I would take him. If it was like something serious, I don't know. I have no idea who I would take, but my crew's pretty solid, both Shane and Shane. And they're both good guys. They both know what they're
you
doing.
have two Shanes. That probably
Yeah,
makes for
yeah, I have two.
some miscommunication on the boat.
Yeah. You call them hey you. Or you
Shane
call
1 and
Shane and
Shane
they both
2.
look. Shane 1 and Shane 2. Yeah.
So when is your first tuna trip of the Delaware season?
I usually start around June 1st.
And do you have bookings close to then?
Yeah, I got a couple days open still in early June. Early June is usually pretty good. Usually things get kicked off around late May. Every year can be different though. Early June is usually good all through the month of June. I want to say maybe 10 or 11 days left for the month of June to fill in. Got a few in there. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I think there's a couple there in early June, a couple sprinkled throughout the rest of the month.
And if you want to wrap this up with just a plug of your charter on how they can get a hold of you, where they can see your stuff, how they can reach you, how they can book, we'll do that and then we'll wrap this thing up.
So yeah, if you guys want to book, you can book it through me directly. My cell phone is 302-345-0545. Shoot me a call or shoot me a text or give me a call anytime. You can message me on Facebook. My Facebook page is No Limit Sport Fishing. Look us up on there, or Instagram. Any ways you want, get a hold of me and we'll get you booked up.
I can tell you, going out with this guy, you're going to come back with a ton of fish. So whatever cooler you're thinking about bringing, bring a bigger one. Like if you got a pickup truck, bring that too. Like you're going to need it. If you don't have a truck, bring a U-Haul. Anything that you can, because you're going to come home loaded to the gills with fish. Like if you're expecting to come back with 30 pounds, this isn't the charter for you. Like you're coming back with a ton. John is an absolute slayer. I have never been on his boat that we didn't come back with like 1,000 pounds of fish. And I'm sure you're going to be the same. Like if you just look at this guy's Facebook, or you look at mine, or you look at my TikTok or Instagram or YouTube videos, we have tons of them up there of his boat. And I mean, it's amazing how it can even float. Like this guy absolutely slays every trip. He needs the harpoon for the most part. Like they straight slay. Like, if I can recommend one charter to go on, this is the guy. So book your vacation to Delaware. I know it doesn't sound exciting. I promise it will be. The downside is you're going to have to spend time in Rehoboth. The good side is it's going to be on John's boat 100 miles offshore.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is John Azato from No Limits. Thank you for tuning in, John. It was a pleasure as always. We look forward to being out there with you soon. And thank you guys for tuning in. Like I said before, Magic Tail Outfitters is our show sponsor. If you use the code Deepwater Legends, all capital letters, you get 15% off your order of 50 or more. If you are a charter captain that is looking to come on the show, or you're an industry professional or gear supplier or something, feel free to reach out to us, deepwaterlegends@gmail.com. We'd love to talk to you and have you on the show as well. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Every subscription helps us deliver more content to you. Check out our YouTube channel for more videos. We post a lot of shorts. We post these videos. These videos also come at you on Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. It's all of the main ones. And we plan on bringing in a ton more. We have about 20 guests lined up right now from all different aspects of the fishing industry. It's going to be fun. I'm Nate. This is Troy. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys soon.